My name is Kieloch. I am an international relations student at the Jagiellonian University. And today I would like to talk a little bit about climate justice with regard to previous American justice theories, notably theories of John Rawls and Robert Nozick. I will start with a brief introduction to climate change topic. I believe we are all familiar with that, but I will just allow myself for a brief introduction. Yes, since 1880, global temperature rose by 1 degree. 19 of the warmest years have occurred since 2000. Scientists have no doubt, if we fail to limit global temperatures at 1.5 Celsius degrees above the pre-industrial level, consequences will be irreversible and extremely grave for the planet, but also for the humankind. And if the temperatures will continue to increase at the current rate, it is likely that we will reach 1.5 threshold between 2030 and 2052, says Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. Climate justice concept frames climate change as not simply an environmental problem, but also economic, political, racial, and social one. Basically, climate justice proponents say that some people and nations are more responsible for climate change than others, due to, of course, historical developments. Western countries such as the US, United Kingdom, Canada, European Union member states have been burning coal for centuries now. They developed mostly because of that, and therefore they are more responsible for the rise of temperatures than developing countries. The same goes for the domestic level. It's usually the rich whose consumption is higher. They usually live a lifestyle that is more harmful for the planet. They simply use more resources. Because of the social, economic, and racial disparities, some people will suffer more consequences than others. The consequences of climate change will not be evenly distributed. Who is going to suffer the most increasing food and electricity prices? Is the poor. Also, geographical differences play a major role in climate change. Those consequences will be less visible in Poland than in Australia or Burkina Faso because of the climate they had at the beginning, much warmer climate than in Poland. However, because of those economic disparities I've been talking previously, it will be easier for Australia to cope with these changes, for example, by providing their citizens with some kind of support, subsidized food, water, and electricity prices, provides temporary shelters when there is a natural disaster, than for Burkina Faso, which is one of the poorest countries in the world. Therefore, climate justice proponents say that those who got us here should take the responsibility. For example, by paying more in taxes, limiting their consumption, changing their systems faster, for example, putting coal faster than developing countries. This applies both to domestic and international level. So fighting climate change shouldn't be at the expense of the poorer and less powerful. Basically, if we do not implement just social reforms, climate change will further exacerbate inequalities that are already present in our societies. I will now move on to John Rawls' theory of justice. He would claim that the history of the humanity's failures that happened despite living in a liberal democracy were caused by a misplacement of priorities. We as a society did not pay enough attention to the definition of justice, which according to Rawls is the most fundamental value when it comes to our political institutions. Climate justice supporters would somehow agree with that. They see that misplacement as concentrating solely on economic growth, not on environmental costs that come with them, with the growth. So what does he mean? What does he mean by justice? He came up with this concept of distributed justice, Basically, as a society, we produce a lot of value simply by working together. We work together because it brings us some benefits. We are more efficient as a group. The question that Rawls asked is, how should we distribute this surplus we created together? And he called this surplus primary social goods, such as rights, liberties, or wealth, in the most just manner. Climate justice proponents would add to these primary social goods rights such as a right to clean air, or a right to clean water, or a right to safe environment. For him, it's obvious that inequalities exist in a society. They come into being often naturally. So Rawls does not want to, he does not propose to eradicate them completely. It wouldn't be possible. Instead, he proposes a concept called the difference principle, where an equality is just as long as it's based on some sort of work or effort that somebody has put in, and not some arbitrary chance. So it shouldn't mean that we should own the consequences of something that is in our life solely because of horrible or good stroke of luck. And he also came up with this idea of the maximum rule, which is basically a rule that says that if we as a society were to create a society through a veil of ignorance, meaning if we don't know our, if we wouldn't know our age, race, economic or social status, we would choose a society that is the best for the least advantaged. So basically, Rawls' theory of justice says that inequalities are just as long as they are benefiting those least advantaged in a society. Yes, so now moving on to climate justice. So I think Rawls would endorse some sort of, for example, climate taxation, for example, taxing billionaires to fund fight with climate change, because according to the maximum rule, a society ravaged by a climate crisis is a horrible scenario for all, but the worst for the least advantaged. Therefore, we should strive for the best scenario for everyone, the one in which climate change does not destroy our planet. To realize that scenario, everyone must work for it, also the billionaires. There are some billionaires that are rich because of the hard work they put in, but there are also ones who were just extremely lucky, and that's arbitrary. So for Rawls, those who do not contribute to the overall benefit of the society, for example, fighting climate change, should be taxed or somehow or punished in some other way. So once again, the difference in money or status is only justifiable when it is used to benefit the rest of the society. And if the benefit of the modern society equals fighting climate change, I think Rawls would agree with climate justice proponents. Moving on to next political thinker I will talk about today, Robert Nozick's concept of justice. So one of Rawls' basic assumptions is that the government would know how to redistribute, when to do it, why, from who to whom. Well, Nozick says, how can we know for sure that the government knows what's best for us? Will the government solve our problems or rather create some new ones? What lies at the center of Nozick's thought is the question of government's capability of solving problems and its responsibility. So Nozick was a supporter of an idea he called the minimal state. Contrary to this big Rawlsian government that knows what is best for its citizens, the minimal state understands that The citizens want to live freely, execute their rights, and that they do not want to be told what to do and how to live. People in Nozick's vision of the society want to be simply left alone. It's the idea that the state's only responsibility is to provide its people basic protection and enforce contracts to make sure we can execute our rights, mainly property rights. His concept of justice also differs significantly. It is definitely less utilitarian and less morally oriented. For him, it doesn't matter if you deserve something. For him, justice is fairness, be that $1 million estate or being born in a poor and dangerous environment. It doesn't matter, you get what you get. And the only way to determine if that was just is to check if you acquired it legally. So here comes the entitlement theory, which says that, yes, the only way to verify if something is just is to see if you are entitled to it. So one of the most important ideas for Nozick is this, that no person should be harmed without their consent. So I think he would not agree with climate justice proponents and their ideas, for example, taxation, additional climate taxation, for example, of the billionaires, because they would be harmed without their consent. Yes, so I think he would not be okay with limiting our personal freedom, which climate justice proponents propose. They say that to fight climate change, we must be willing to sacrifice some of our personal freedoms. He would not agree with that. And climate justice concept would basically violate some of these personal rights, such as right to property. And I think my time is running out, so I will just move on to my bibliography. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And I can't wait to listen to other participants. Thank you.